Hey everybody, today we're going to look at tier 1 of the MUGEN Iceberg, and not just the MUGEN Iceberg, but 3 MUGEN Icebergs. I'm rolling all 3 of these into a single series because all 3 of these icebergs have wildly different entries and sort of cover different themes of the greater MUGEN community. If you don't know, if you're just clicking on this video because you like an iceberg or something like that, I will get into exactly what MUGEN is. You will learn what it is at some point in this video, but just as a quick primer, it's a fighting game engine. People make content. People have been making content for like 20 years. You can put character stages, whatever, into it, and being a community that's been around for God knows, like over 20 years at this point, there's going to be a lot of things to cover. This first tier is mostly just really basic information with some more fun things down at the end, touching on some community memes and more well-known tropes of MUGEN that if you have ever been exposed to anything about this, you'll likely recognize. There'll be some gameplay in the background, sometimes relevant, sometimes just eye candy. I think I recorded some interesting matches, so you can ogle at that while I speak. So as we start, please enjoy, please look forward to future parts, please like and subscribe if you do like and want to see more, and let's get on with it. I suppose we should start right at the beginning for anyone completely uninitiated who might have just stumbled across this. MUGEN is a free open-source fighting game engine created by Elecbyte designed to allow people to make their own fighting games. The MS-DOS version of MUGEN is not as widely known as some of its later releases, and much of MUGEN's lifespan has since bounced around between official releases, hacked versions, and fan releases to add more content, customizability, and easing engine restraints. We'll definitely be covering more of MUGEN's development and specific versions later, but you get the gist of what we're dealing with here. Basically just a free-form platform to create a fighting game based on whatever you'd like, from existing fighting game characters to characters from completely unrelated media to entirely original characters. Okay, this is going to be another pretty obvious one, and a lot of these early entries are going to be pretty obvious, so just bear with me here. It goes without saying that the most fundamental component of MUGEN has to be the characters. The lifeblood of a community existing for 2 decades is the creation and sharing of an absolute countless amount of custom-made fighters of varying degrees of quality, from the first-timers, MS Paint champions, who have more love than skill put into them, to the straight-up jaw-dropping, engine-bending marvels of creation, to the quirky, silly, creepy, and straight up broken. As with the previous entry, we will be covering many character archetypes in more detail later, so there isn't a whole lot to go into right now. The main takeaway is that MUGEN's potential roster is massive, from matchups between Goku and Sub-Zero to Megaman versus Tom Hanks. Virtually anything is possible. And this wasn't part of the script, but I'm kind of adding this in afterwards. A really good point to illustrate this is I found Saul Goodman and Huel from Breaking Bad, and I really just had to add this to kind of drive home the point that literally anything is in MUGEN. Absolutely beautiful. Just look at this, please. This one should be self-explanatory to people with even no fighting game knowledge at all. A stage is the graphical element as to where your characters are fighting. For the most part, the stage choice is almost entirely cosmetic, with no bearing on the gameplay, and just generally being set dressing with music and visuals. One thing that stages do tend to vary in is the way at which the camera will track the characters, meaning some maps may not follow characters that descend too far vertically, usually from what's called super jumping, meaning certain stages are more suitable for certain characters than others. There are some extremely iconic stages and other entries related to them that we will cover later as well. Obviously, one of the fundamentals of the fighting game genre since Street Fighter 2 is going to be present in the ultimate crossover fighting game engine. If you are somehow uninitiated enough to not know what a combo is, in basic terms it's the act of linking 2 or more moves together by cancelling the animation of one move into another, creating a string of attacks that typically cannot be interrupted until the combo somehow ends, typically due to a move ending it with no further follow-ups, or user error with the combo being dropped due to misinput, or sometimes a third external factor. Due to MUGEN's infinitely customizable nature, combos are entirely nebulous. Some characters may have very simple strings of basic inputs, some characters may have excessively long and complex inputs, some may have no combos at all, and some may even have infinite combos that end matches on first touch. So considering the fact that MUGEN is an engine designed for fighting games, of course the majority of the characters created for it will have special moves. For the complete fighting game newbies, special moves are performed with some kind of modified input to produce more situationally powerful attacks than normal, such as a projectile, anti-air, a mobility move, etc. A super, also known as a hyper or ultra contextually, is a move that consumes some sort of resource, like a meter, in order to cash out massive amounts of damage. Obviously not without exception, but the majority of characters will have access to these flashy and powerful moves. Some characters have their own ways for using these, either with a different type of meter that may have been pulled from their original game, or an entirely unique system to themselves. Many MUGEN characters can break good senses from traditional fighting games in what special and hyper moves can really be. Sometimes you can see some really absurd and rancid design decisions like unblockable projectiles or insta-kill supers that would never be present in a commercial fighting game, but things like that are really part of the joy of playing MUGEN. Another fairly obvious one. The main popularity of MUGEN is the fact that anything you can imagine can be used. As we've seen with more recent fighting game releases, it seems the main draw for fighting game fans is the prospect of your favorite characters ending up facing off against totally different franchises. Think things like Akuma in Tekken 7, Geralt and 2B in Soul Calibur 6, or the entire main appeal of games like Marvel vs. Capcom or Super Smash Bros. Lately, we've even seen the appeal of the crossover start showing up in other genres, the main example being the absurdity of the Fortnite crossover universe. If you consider the average person's excitement for seeing their faves in places they don't typically belong, you can imagine the popularity of a game entirely designed around that concept, especially with the fact that if your personal favorite hasn't made it in yet, you can take it up upon yourself to make that a reality. MUGEN comes pre-bundled with a few different ways to play the game, aside from just a plain 1v1 versus mode. I'll just go ahead and list them for you in the order that they appear in the default motif. Arcade mode is the standard fighting game single-player mode of fighting increasingly harder and harder AI opponents. Characters within MUGEN can be assigned an order value from 1 to 30 that determines how early or late they will appear in any given run of arcade, as well as values that can change for how many rounds arcade goes for. There is also Team Arcade, which lets you choose an AI-controlled partner to play with through the matches. Versus mode is the local multiplayer 1v1 mode. You can connect either external controllers or share a keyboard with a friend. It's exactly what you expect it to be. You can also use the debug keys in this mode to create player versus AI or AI versus AI matches. Team versus can be used to create 2v2 to 4v4 style matches, either having each teammate function as their own life with a winner stays on style similar to something like King of Fighters, or a simultaneous mode where all characters are present and the partners are controlled by the AI. Team co-op is functionally Team Arcade, except you may have a second human being controlling your second character. Survival is very similar in function to arcade, except that it has no set match limit, and you don't get your life restored fully after every match. It also has no access to the storyboards of arcade mode, which is something some characters have that gives them a little extra narrative flair. You also have the option to use an AI-controlled partner or compete in a team, which impacts how much life you gain after every match. Survival does not use the values set for arcade mode, which makes it possible to come across unwinnable matches featuring certain character archetypes we will discuss more at a later video. Survival co-op is literally just everything I just said, except your AI controlled partner can now be a guy. Training is training. It's the lab. It has all of your features of training. You just beat a guy. That's it. And finally, we have watch mode. This is a mode that allows you to solely set up matches between AI opponents and watch them fight. Similarly to the versus modes, you can use the debug keys to take manual control of a character or change life and meter values. Pretty much everything you can do in debug keys. We will talk about those as well in a later entry here. Elecbyte is the enigmatic group behind the creation of MUGEN. Not much is known about them overall, aside from the fact that they were founded in 1998 and have only seemed to have ever worked on MUGEN. They have a website, however, the only currently available page seems to be the download page for the game itself, and the rest leading to a 403 error. You can find a current update history that leads back to the 1.0 version of MUGEN, but very little other information. They also have a Twitter that was last active in 2016 for one tweet and 2012 prior. According to Elecbyte's last tweet made in 2016, they are currently in retirement. However, they are still passionate about 2D fighting games. F1 is the most well-known debug key in the game. While having the debug mode enabled, pressing F1 in a match will instantly kill player 2 in a 1v1, and players 2 and 4 in a 2v2, effectively ending the game in a win for player 1 in almost all circumstances. Hitting Control F1 inverses the effect, instantly killing players 1 and 3 where possible. F1 also exists as a character made by I'm sorry. This character functions almost exactly as you'd expect. We'll get into more about F1 and characters of its ilk in a later entry, because we are far too early in this thing to open that can of worms, so please look forward to that. All you need to know in this case is that the character of F1 immediately kills its opponent and cannot be killed itself. Final Destination is one of the most well-known stages created for MUGEN, but more accurately, it's one of the most well-known types of stage. As implied by the name, Final Destination stages are created in the image of the stage in the same name from Super Smash Bros., and there exists a Final Destination based on every Smash Bros. Variant, from the original to Ultimate, with multiple versions created by different people in between. The most well-known one is Neo-Kamix, based on Super Smash Bros. Melee. Neo-Kamix also released many other stages based on those from Super Smash Bros. Melee, as well as a second version of Final Destination. We covered a bit of this in the entry for F1. Debug mode can be activated by pressing Ctrl D in-game, which opens up a variety of hotkeys and key combinations to alter the game state and generate information about characters. I won't list them all here, but there are options for instantly killing players as seen with F1, refilling or depleting life bars, filling super meters, resetting the timer, setting the timer to 0, restarting the round, displaying hitboxes, hurt boxes, collision boxes, and the list just goes on and on. You can also open the MUGEN console that allows for more specific commands to be entered, as I would hope the majority of you know how console commands work if you ever played a Source game or something like that. I've rolled these two up into one entry because they more or less occupy the same idea. Both Kung Fu Man and Mountainside Temple are default assets included with the release of MUGEN, with Kung Fu Man, usually abbreviated to KFM, being the default character, and Mountainside Temple being the default stage. Mountainside Temple isn't the only default stage, there is also usually a training room, but Mountainside Temple is usually the most iconic. Specifically in regards to KFM, the character is fully functional but extremely basic, usually being entirely outclassed by any character you may add after initially downloading the engine. One detail about KFM and his associate stage is that they are extremely popular as far as making edited characters and stages go. Some notable examples of KFM edits are Augie's KFM with reworked sprites, better AI, and more fast-paced gameplay, Divine Wolf's KFM, who was reworked to play more like a Capcom vs SNK character, Kung Fu Girl, who has many iterations and practically has become her own archetype, and Evil Kung Fu Man. Self-explanatory. MUGEN Fighters Guild is one of the oldest MUGEN communities on the internet. It hosts a large variety of creators, each with their own personal spaces, and one of the oldest and most complete databases currently still running. They also have a forum that is one of the most active existing MUGEN communities as of this date. The forums are also an almost perfectly preserved record of the MUGEN community's history throughout the years, and it's really interesting to read about trends and drama and things that have occurred like well over a decade ago. MUGEN YouTubers refers to exactly that, people on YouTube who create MUGEN videos. The videos are usually 1v1 fights against characters requested by members of said YouTubers' communities. The only interesting thing I could really find about this topic specifically is the occasional controversy about private characters. Some creators will release characters solely to their friends, or in this case YouTubers, to showcase in their videos. Some people in the community find this practice unfair and think all characters should be publicly available to everybody. Creators will push back against this, saying that their characters are their property and they can allow releases when they choose, and may not feel the community is responsible enough to have complete access to their work, especially as characters can be freely edited by anyone. We will definitely be discussing private characters more in depth later in the series, but this is the instance that's most relevant here. Some YouTubers also showcase unfinished and work-in-progress characters that are given to them for the exact purpose of giving viewers a taste of what a character will be like before it's fully complete. Some MUGEN YouTubers create plots or storylines between their videos, and the fights act as key confrontations in those plot lines, and some other MUGEN creators may do more structured videos making rankings or talking about certain aspects of characters or even the MUGEN community as a whole. Similar to MUGEN YouTubers, this entry is about a specific MUGEN streamer. Streamer is a bit of an unfair term, as Saltybet isn't so much as a streamer, but a 24-hour perpetual live stream showcasing AI MUGEN battles. The main draw of the Saltybet stream is that the viewers are able to gamble salt through the Saltybet website and gain or lose salt based on the outcome of the match, with the usual betting odds system applying to the potential payouts. The simulated gambling on Saltybet is entirely done with fictional currency and is in no way tied to real-world money, so unlike previous gambling controversies we've seen on Twitch, Saltybet is entirely for fun, or not so fun when you lose big. Speaking of Twitch, it's possible that it was Saltybet that inspired the whole Twitch prediction system that allows people to bet channel points on stream, as it works almost identically to Saltybet's system and uses a similar fake currency with no real-world monetary activity. Saltybet also has a robust system of tiers that characters are placed based on performance that helps create more fair and interesting matches, and there are tournaments regularly held that can move characters up or down tiers depending on how well they do in these tournaments. Saltybet is also interesting in that they have acquired an absolutely absurd amount of characters in their roster. I originally wrote nearly every character ever created, which is definitely wrong, but I still feel like that's closer to reality, meaning that even veterans who have been watching for years will still be surprised with characters they've never seen and matchups they couldn't have possibly predicted. One of the customization options people create for the engine is a Screenpack, sometimes known as a Motif. These change all the visual elements of MUGEN's menu AI, such as main screen and character select. There are a ton, ranging from excellent original designs to emulating designs from your favorite fighting games, to emulating designs from things that aren't even fighting games. The character select screen in particular is very important. Depending on the roster you have built, they will have a set amount of character slots, so it's a good idea to match the Screenpack you choose with how many characters you want to have installed. Other elements the Screenpack controls is the match intro screen and win quote screen. However, it should be noted that Screenpacks do not always change the in-match UI, such as life bars. Oftentimes, they will come bundled with these, but you can freely mix and match to your pleasure. Soundpacks are character-specific customization options that alter what sounds a character makes in a match. Soundpacks can range from higher quality voice lines or sound effects, especially common when a new game is released. Older characters may get updated with a new sound pack containing updated assets, i.e. a Ryu character released prior to Street Fighter 4, getting an updated sound pack using that game's sounds later, to silly sound changes and community-related joke packs, to entirely different language options. Sound packs really only exist for the most popular characters, although some creators may release sound packs for their own characters, either as separate updates later in their life or alternate language packs. When selecting a character, depending on the button or combination of buttons you use, you may be able to pick alternate colors for that character's. This is a usual feature in fighting games with the original intention of differentiating two characters being used in the same match. However, that concept has expanded to allow players to express themselves more individually, and the developers to have some fun creating new styles and sometimes references to other media. MUGEN is absolutely no exception, with many characters sporting the maximum allowed 12 palettes, and occasionally even giving unique names with that character's files. Palettes also have another interesting property. MUGEN allows palettes to influence certain aspects of the character itself, to the point where there exists all-in-one characters, where each selected palette is a functionally different character. This is also how we get what is commonly referred to as 12p mode. Some characters will have a special variant set to their 12th and final palette that acts as a boss mode and is significantly more powerful than normal, to the point of potentially even being broken. Some examples I've been playing with that I'll show in the video here is 12p Goku, who exists in Ultra Instinct and is virtually unkillable, and 12p Dio, who is also virtually unkillable. The MUGEN archive is known as the largest and possibly oldest surviving MUGEN warehouse on the internet. A warehouse is a term for a website that hosts MUGEN content, like characters and stages, independently of their creators. Warehousing was originally frowned upon in the community. It was seen as scummy to upload a creator's content elsewhere without their permission, and it was always encouraged to download content from the creator's official page. However, over the last few years, as domains have closed and many creators' contents have become lost over time, the opinion on warehouses has softened quite a bit, for the sake of archival and preservation. Since its inception in 2009, originally known as The Chronicles of MUGEN, the creators That Man and Blade Art have maintained that their intention with the website is for archival and preservation above all else, as this was around the time where domains were expiring and the public was losing access to content at an alarming rate. The MUGEN archive has one of the most comprehensive catalogs of content on the entire community, containing many rare and lost characters that even some other large warehouses lack. However, many things in the archive are not perfect, such as characters not being on their final releases, or stages being bundled with the incorrect music, or edits slipping slipping in as their original counterparts. The archive also hosts forums and a wiki similarly to the MUGEN Fighters Guild. The forum is a fantastic historical record of the MUGEN community. The wiki, however, seems very underdeveloped, especially compared to the more popular wiki option we'll cover in the next entry. The archive also has gone through its fair share of drama, which will be covered more in depth in 2 later entries. Those stories are a little long for this entry and are interesting enough to stand on their own. The MUGEN database is generally considered the official wiki of MUGEN, being created originally in 2005 by Veer. It has gone through many hands and ownerships since Veer themselves only ran the wiki for 15 days before leaving it in the hands of its contributors, with Jengra505 being asked by Wikia staff to take ownership after the majority of contributors seem to have abandoned the site. The wiki was hosted on Wikicities before being migrated to Wikia a year later, and has endured its fair share of troubles since, such as being forced to use the Oasis style in 2010 after Wikia homogenized their site's visual styles, and Wikia's eventual acquisition by Fandom in 2018. The main purpose of the MUGEN database was to be a repository for information rather than just bare download links and single-sentence descriptions, which was overwhelmingly common for both official sources and warehouses. The wiki isn't without its own fair share of issues. As described on the actual real wiki page for the site itself, MUGEN database has often been criticized for its apparent lack of standards, choice of content, and insufficient technical information regarding the characters it documents. In doing a bit of research for this, actually, I came across quite a few Twitter threads and comments basically saying how a lot of the information on the wiki is just straight up wrong and written by a lot of people who weren't really there for certain events. As someone who wasn't like officially part of the community for a lot of certain events, that makes it really dubious to do any sort of research on the wiki, which is really unfortunate. So if I do get any information wrong, feel free to call me out in the comments, because even though I was heavily into MUGEN when I was quite a bit younger, I didn't have like an online presence with a lot of this stuff. WinMUGEN was the original release of MUGEN for the Windows operating system after the previous version for MS-DOS and then Linux. The official release of WinMUGEN was technically a demo that released in 2002, with only 2 characters allowed and nag screens asking you to purchase the full version. In 2003, Elecbyte's website was shut down, and with the development team being considered no more, someone created a hacked version of WinMUGEN to unlock the 2-character limit and remove the nag screen. This was the first popular, widespread release of MUGEN that started to build the community we know today, outside of the original MS-DOS version. There was a community for the MS-DOS and Linux releases, but the doors were absolutely blown open by WinMUGEN. Funny enough, characters made back in the MS-DOS version work mostly fine in WinMUGEN, with adjustments needed for the palettes to display properly, and the Linux release was very nearly identical to WinMUGEN. Many other hacked versions have since been released, with various improvements such as support for HD Screenpacks and stages. WinMUGEN has since generally been usurped by either MUGEN 1.0 or 1.1, but there are still many people who prefer it due to better audio quality and certain limitations making some mechanics more possible. Some of those mechanics we will cover specifically in later entries as well. These are the 2 considered to be most up-to-date versions of MUGEN available by Elecbyte themselves after their 8-year hiatus between 2002 and 2009, when they moved on from WinMUGEN and attempted to handle a transition to HD themselves. Many other improvements were made, such as drastically improving the color limits on characters and native support for HD resolutions. The road up to 1.0 was a little rough, with a fair few bugs and incompatibilities present that were largely fixed by the full release of 1.0. Elecbyte then continued to work on MUGEN sporadically until 2015 with the release of MUGEN 1.1 Beta 1, which is considered by some to be the most complete version despite, once again, certain incompatibilities with existing content and some added challenges to develop for compared to 1.0 or even WinMUGEN. About 9 months after the release of 1.1 Beta 1, Elecbyte would then almost entirely cease to exist once again, and as of creating this video, barring a single tweet in 2016, no further developments from them. Fighter Factory is a piece of software created by Virtual Tech that is the most well-known and robust creation software for MUGEN. The original 1.0 version was released in 2005 for use with WinMUGEN and is currently on version 3.7.1, released in 2022, literally just before me writing the script for this video. I don't have a whole lot to say here. I'm not personally a creator in this sense, and back when I spent a lot of time in MUGEN, really the only things I made were a handful of mostly broken stages, so I don't really have the ability to to get into the details of exactly what Fighter Factory can do, but just seeing the update history and even what people have been making with the software in recent years, it's very obvious how far this software has come and just how powerful it is. In a personal note, I did used to use Fighter Factory to go through character sprites and just like look at details of characters when I was younger. Had no idea how to use the software at all, what I was doing with it. But that also did lead me to find that some of the characters I had were compatible with a couple of certain 18 plus characters, and anyone that knows what I'm talking about knows what I'm talking about. So young me definitely saw some things that I shouldn't have. That's one of my memories with this software for sure. Okay, alright, so for starters, Touhou is a series of shoot-'em-up games, also called shmups, developed for the PC-98 originally and then for Windows shortly after. The first Touhou game was released in 1997 called Highly Responsive to Prayers, while the most recent mainline game as of this video was the 2021 release of Unconnected Marketeers, the 18th Touhou game. Now this seems entirely unrelated to MUGEN, and from the surface, the games have absolutely nothing to do with each other. However, one thing to consider is that the Touhou fandom is absolutely massive. It is a considerably ancient series with about 1 billion unique characters that seem to just gather more and more people, and the crux of it is that the Venn diagram of Touhou fans and MUGEN fans is almost a straight up circle, or at the very least people with a tangential appreciation for Touhou. This has led to Touhou characters being some of the most popular characters to be made for MUGEN, despite the core series having nothing to do with fighting games at all. One huge thing to mention, however, is the Touhou spin-offs directly affecting the MUGEN community. As I said, there were 18 mainline Touhou games, however there are many spin-offs, official and unofficial, including many full-fledged fighting games. The official Touhou fighting games were made in conjunction with the company Twilight Frontier, and the majority of the characters from those games have been fully ported to MUGEN, as well as edits of those characters to create other Touhou characters not featured in the fighting games. As well, there are people just straight up making original versions of those characters with original art and original movesets. The amount of characters available from the series is just staggering, and to an outsider, it can be absolutely overwhelming. Another weird personal anecdote, I guess, is MUGEN was actually what got me into Touhou, along with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, funny enough, in a really roundabout way. But I had played Touhou characters in MUGEN before I ever knew what Touhou was. And then having another friend like get me into Touhou afterwards, it just like a whole cyclical thing. But very interesting how the communities of these completely overlap and like engulf each other. This has to be one of the most well-known characters to ever grace the MUGEN community, being featured in countless memes and referenced by many other characters. Obviously based on the McDonald's mascot of the same name, Ronald, or Donald as he's known in Japan, became an absolute force in the MUGEN community after his creation by Kishio in 2007. Donald's character is mostly based on Dio Brando from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, specifically the all-caps Dio from the Capcom fighting game known as Heritage for the Future in the West. Ronald also uses sprites and moves from many other characters, including Jotaro Kujo from the same JoJo game, Rugal Bernstein and Vanessa, both from King of Fighters 98, and various Guilty Gear characters. The original release of Donald is known specifically for having some insane combos and vicious AI, which has led to him being described as cheap by a significant number of players, as well as having 2 unique palette variations, one known as the Donald Core, which spawns him in with several other AI-controlled Ronalds that have the exact same life and power as the original, who will quickly obliterate any opponent, and the other known as Dark Donald, who is a deliberately cheap version made to be a boss version of Ronald, with massively improved attack, defense, and mobility. Okay, editing Sungazer here. I totally forgot to mention in my actual script of the video that Ronald, or Donald, is so popular, at least originally as a MUGEN character, because of the meme in Japan, based on the Ranranru stuff from Nico Nico, the whole McDonald's advertising campaign over there. I'll put up some clips. A lot of like his voice lines as the character were taken from those commercials and things like that. That I feel like it's a really big part of it that I totally just forgot about. Okay, to explain this entry fully, we should probably get into exactly what an edit is. It's fairly self-explanatory, but an edit is a character that is edited from an existing MUGEN character, unlike characters, ported from other games or series. There are many different reasons an edit is created. Sometimes to fix a janky moveset or make them more balanced. Other times it's to make a more broken version or give them a silly meme moveset. This entry specifically refers to the possibility that Ronald is the one MUGEN character with the most edits ever created. Just taking a look at the MUGEN database's wiki page for Donald edits shows you just the absolute scope of how many of these things there are out there, from Symbiote Donald, Ice Donald, Sadist Donald, and Big Bang Donald R. These edits can vary wildly in quality, especially given how significantly they vary in age. There's so many Ronald edits out there that one could straight up compile a single complete game using them and still have a fair amount of variety in character choice. Personally, my two favorite Ronald edits that I've been installing most in my MUGEN releases is Winter Donald, which is like an entire ice-based, just like projectile spam character, and an edit called The Melancholy, which I think I used some footage from him earlier, but has just some of the most like absurdly detailed and like high quality like supers and specials. Like everything about the character is just like maximum effort, and the whole joke is that it's just like a depressed wage slave Donald McDonald. Oh, I love him so much.
そうこなくちゃ面白くない。
Considering the fact that MUGEN is supposed to be a game engine despite being treated as a game in and of itself a lot of times, it shouldn't be surprising that prospective creators use it for its intended purpose to create standalone fighting games. These can range from fan games such as Hyper Dragon Ball Z and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Requiem to entirely original games such as MUGE-Fami. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's the NES/Famicom MUGEN original fighting game, and Rumble Pack. Not a whole lot more to say about these since they're pretty self-explanatory. They're a great way to just jump right into MUGEN with minimal setup and have some fun with characters that you may like. With the complete creative freedom given to creators of MUGEN, you can expect a wide variety of character types, and included in that is the joke character. Joke characters can range from your typical examples, the Dan Hibiki type goofy loser character, to the absurd and eye-searing, like the ever-classic Omega Tiger Woods. Joke characters range in power from practically useless to completely overpowered, so there's just a massive variety here. Many intentionally cheap characters also fall into the joke character category, such as Mickey Speedway and Omega Tom Hanks, but we'll definitely get into those characters more in later tiers. Joke characters have been practically a staple in the MUGEN community since its inception, and if you watched enough Saltybet, you'll be sure to see a huge variety of them as well. I want to give a shout out to like my favorite joke character that I found recently. Somebody made the grid crab from Cruelty Squad, the Gorbino's Quest character, and it plays the music and everything. I'm so happy it exists. It can't be killed. It has no hitbox. It just like inches forward and deals damage every time. It's so good. I just look at it. Also, go play Cruelty Squad if you haven't. That game is fantastic. Now, completely unrelated to MUGEN, but really good. This entry refers to the massive amount of characters based on Jump Ultimate Stars, a fighting game featuring characters from various Shonen Jump series released in 2008 for the Nintendo DS. The game itself features a massive roster of 306 characters, and although the majority of them aren't strictly fighters, that hasn't stopped creators from turning a large amount of them into fully playable MUGEN characters. Since then as well, creators have been making many other characters in the style of JUS, making sprites that mimic the art style and having their gameplay fall similarly into the existing characters. JUS is another example of a wildly popular archetype for MUGEN, with quite a few compilation releases made using strictly just these characters. There's also a bit of controversy with the JUS characters. This is entirely unscripted. I found this out just going through comments and things. People seem to just hate these characters. I think because just the frequency in which they're made, a lot of like low effort characters are made in this style, and the simplicity of the characters. Typically they'll only be 2-button like heavy light auto combo on mash with single button specials. Form wise, they're always quite small. You kind of just need to pair JUS characters with JUS characters, or else they do not fit in most normal rosters. Personally, I actually really like them. There's such a variety of them from like just every series that it's kind of fun to just build rosters with just JUS characters. But like, I'm a freak, so don't take that opinion with any sort of weight. But yeah, that's just an extra point. When I wrote the script, I definitely did not dive deep enough into what JUS MUGEN actually is. But yeah, you'll see by the gameplay exactly what these guys are. Okay, and now we're back to Ronald McDonald. So this entry refers to specifically the intro cutscene between Donald and Colonel Sanders, another character based on a fast food franchise who is functionally a heavily edited version of Kung Fu Man. While most of us probably view a rivalry between McDonald's and KFC as a strange choice, as those two restaurants seem to occupy entirely different spaces of eating establishments, in Japan, the competition between the two has been raging on for years. Colonel Sanders isn't the only fast food themed character, however. There's also a Burger King and a Jack in the Box mascot. The Burger King character is so terrible, but like I needed an example to like round out the example roster. Really sorry about that. Jack in the Box character is actually really well made though. Check that guy out. This is a strange one that's entirely based on the way Elecbyte stylized the name of MUGEN. In the majority of cases, they have it written out as an acronym, which Elecbyte has never clarified the meaning of. The word MUGEN itself means infinite or unlimited in Japanese, which makes absolute sense for a fighting game engine that can be customized to be anything you want. However, the acronym has eluded people for decades now. It's even thought that Elecbyte has long since forgotten what it's supposed to mean and will likely never know for sure. Normally on Iceberg charts, this entry is near the bottom, but in MUGEN's case, it's kind of the opposite. Unlike Mario 64, whose alleged personalization is only theorized and subject to many creepy stories and internet mysteries, MUGEN's is much more obvious and straightforward. Every player of MUGEN has their own copy of MUGEN, with its own characters and stages and aesthetic tailored to their own taste. Outside of the initial unedited download or complete compilation games, no two installations of MUGEN are alike. Okay, so that was tier 1 of the MUGEN Icebergs. I really hope you enjoyed that. That was very interesting to make. That was a very nice excuse to get back into MUGEN and everything I love about it. I'm trying out something different from my last video of unscripted intro, outro, and some of those little unscripted blurbs and anecdotes that I have thrown in. I think that makes it kind of feel a little more natural. Hopefully you like it. If you don't, tell me it's cringe in the comments and I will cease. Next video won't be likely the tier 2 yet. I kind of want to alternate between a MUGEN video and something else between the two. I don't know what I'm gonna do next. I have a few ideas rattling around. I might just not come up with anything and do tier 2 right away. Speaking of my previous video, if you want to see another quote-unquote iceberg, that one I just made myself for funsies. And also if you're Canadian, that one might be interesting to you. It's about Canadian PSAs. But yeah, I really enjoyed making this one. Aside from the technical difficulties of having my microphone die on me, just it was a quadcast. A firmware chip just decided that it had enough life and didn't want to work anymore. So hopefully it's within warranty. We'll see if that works. It is a whole personal thing. I'm now on a JLab Talk Pro that I got got for a very good deal. Sound quality, from what I can tell, is very close. It's not as warm as the Quadcast, which isn't so much what I like, but audio quality for the price is actually phenomenal. Unless some of you in the comments can tell me it sounds like ass, and I will get on get on the HyperX warranty as soon as possible. But otherwise, yeah, if you've made it this far, what's wrong with you? But also, hey, thanks. Please like and subscribe, see more. I'm really actually having a great time making these, and I want to do this for a long time. So yeah, just regular old YouTuber support. Keep me going with this. I got a Twitter somewhere down there. I don't tweet. I just basically tweet out the videos when they come out. I don't really have any followers because it's like a brand new Twitter account. But you know, if people follow me and I post dumbass shit, then thing will occur. Other than that, I think that's it. I've been rambling for too long. If you're still here, just tell me to shut up. I don't know why you're still here. And have a great night.